Alright. So, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Product Perspective Talks. If you are a product manager, you know the customer feedback is a crucial part of your product lifecycle management. But how do you really effectively collect and use the customer feedback to make informed decisions? Hi, I'm Sujeet Pathak. I'm a senior product manager at Amoeboids. Amoeboids is an Atlassian Platinum Marketplace partner, and I welcome you to another episode of our Product Perspective Talks podcast series, where we explore the world of product management and bring you insights from various industry experts. Today, we have a special guest with us, Mr. Jason McGee, product manager at Addteq. So, like Amoeboids, Addteq is also a Atlassian Marketplace partner as well as Atlassian Solutions partner. So, hi Jason, and thank you for joining us. We are really excited to have you with us today.
Thanks a bunch for having me. It's going to be a fun time. I hope so.
Great. So, before we begin with deep dive in the subject of customer feedback in product management, let me begin with a very basic question, like why it is so important to collect customer feedback in your product management journey?
So customer feedback to me is the single most important kind of source of information for basically any product, because as a product manager, you get a sense of what's going to be needed from, research and talking to people and stuff like that. But the fact of the matter is you're not going to take into account every single use case that ever exists. So when customer feedback comes in, whether it be a bug or a feature request or feature improvement or anything like that, it's always something to take a look at. And granted, it's not always going to be useful because it could be something that is completely irrelevant to the actual product itself. But the fact of the matter is it's always going to be useful coming in, because that's where you're going to get a lot of the things that, a year down the line, you say you have 20 requests. I mean, that's just a conservative number about one specific issue. And you're like, okay, this is actually something that we should really look into. It's been a low priority going for the last, year, but we've got all these people that are complaining about it. We should actually really deal with this at this point. So customer feedback is just a great tool because you're never going to think of everything. And it's always going to be one little thing that you're using a browser that you didn't even think of, or a new browser comes out that you're just not messing with, then it becomes really, really popular. Who knows? Could be a lot of different things.
All right. Great. So, like you mentioned, it's really important that you stay in touch with your end user. Actually, when you talk about the customers, they're basically the end users of your tool or your product, and you have to be in touch with them, bring their feedback in day-to-day product management activities that you do, so that you stay on course while satisfying their needs. At the same time, you also align your product vision and product strategy so that there is a win-win strategy between you and your customers. So having said that, how do you really collect your customer feedback in your product management processes? Like, is there a particular tool that you use? Because customers can reach out to you through various channels, so be it an email ID or through a chatbot within your application, through customers, their portals. So there could be multiple sources. How do you manage all these customer feedback?
So the answer is very carefully, is with all the different sources that you get, because yeah, you do. I mean, I'm very much the type of product manager that likes to take information from multiple different sources and kind of dilute them into a singular kind of source of truth to make things easier, not just for myself, but it allows us not to deal with duplicates and see like how many people are actually requesting X issue or X feature or something like that. So currently I use kind of a couple of different main methods to get a customer feedback. So we use probably the main source of truth that we use right now is our Jira service desk platform to get bug issues brought to our attention, feedback related to feature requests or feature improvements or just general questions, anything like that. So we have a team member that kind of first takes a look at those and figures out what's going on there, and then we have multiple weekly meetings where we'll go over new features, we'll get updates on things, they pass things to me if I need to get involved some more. But at the very least, I am aware of what's being brought to my attention, and we have a list of everything that is being brought to our attention at that point. We also use another tool that I'm drawing a blank on the name just off the top of my head. I just completely forgot about it. But we use another tool that also, it's kind of a singular, it's kind of another way to get some more feedback into it. And from there, we will take those things and we'll eventually move them from that one tool into Jira Service Desk at that point, so we can kind of have that singular source. And if we have multiple issues going into one thing, we have our customer reported tickets where we'll have 30 of them or something like that. But those will all directly relate to a ticket in our backlog that we will be working on, that we will prioritize, because they're all dealing with the same thing. And then the developers and product on our side can use that to bring things in, and actually, if we need more answers, we can go to multiple different people, so on and so forth. Another thing, obviously, is just product reviews. Go into the product review page and seeing what is being brought to our attention. I mean, granted, a lot of the times with product reviews, it's usually the negative side of things are usually more prevalent than the positive. That's just the nature of reviews in general. But I mean, negatives are always still a thing that you can look at. I mean, sometimes they're completely irrelevant to that. They just didn't like, I've seen reviews for our products where they basically didn't like the fact that the product was designed the way it was. I mean, it was designed for one specific, methodology and a thing to use it, but they wanted it specifically to be used something else. And so that's just something we can look at. Someone's looking at our products and seeing that, okay, this is what they think it is, but it's not what it's designed for. And that's something we can look at, whether it be a new product or something that we maybe be able to improve upon for the users for that point. But even then, it's just, we can see what people are talking about in those product reviews. Another way is just customer calls. I mean, anytime you're able to get on a customer call is super useful. That direct back and forth without that waiting is like super useful, especially for me. I've had plenty of times where we're going back and forth in a ticket and there's a bunch of miscommunication, understanding, get on a call, and things are, immediately clear at that point. And we're able to work directly at that point and go, that's what you're actually asking for.
Okay.
So, and then, one thing that I just do on a not a fairly regular basis, but every so often, I'll just do kind of a general search online for, mentions of the products and other systems like message boards and things like that, because it's not, depends on the product. Some products I've worked on in the past had essentially like whole message boards that people had developed for that, where they talked about, asking for help or things like that. And that's super useful. Like my current one, doesn't pop up very often, but I have seen it like shown up in, mentions and reviews of other products where it's like, Excellent Table does this, but you don't, or vice versa. And so things like that can always be useful when kind of seeing what people are, looking for, or comparing two products to another from a customer standpoint, not from someone for myself who's internally looking at other products. And I might not see things that are, super clear, but when the customer looks at it, goes, that's a very good point. Didn't think about that. So yeah, it's a lot of different, methodology of feedback that all kind of, I try to get it all into one kind of source of truth. That way things can be clear and not as, nebulous as something like having 30, 40, 50, I've had a previous company where we had, hundreds of tickets about one specific issue, one specific thing. And if you're having to like constantly go through and deal with all of those at once, and you lose them, or they get confused, or one comes in and it's not realized it's a duplicate, so on and so forth, having that one source is just always useful. If you're any way you can kind of get all of those feedback, paths into like a one as best you can. It's never going to be perfect, but best you can is always the way I kind of approach it with managing customer feedback.
Great, great. So some of the points that you mentioned, really important. Like one thing that I personally got a good insight from is like, you mentioned about searching the general search on the net, like what are the mentions about your product and how people are comparing your product with other products. So that's really a good idea to look at your product from a third party perspective and get some insights from that. Uh, you know, even in our case, in the past, we had tried a tool called usertesting.com. So you mentioned that, in the customer calls, you sometimes realize that what their customer really trying to say. The usertesting.com actually helps you to see how your customers or your users are using your, application with the screen recording and the mic recording available to you, and you can actually sense like where they're getting stuck, how the UI being pursued by them. And so sometimes you believe that people are going to understand how the process is, but sometimes people just don't understand the UI. So you get that perspective as well. Having said that, like, Jason, sometimes it could be overwhelming. So if you have multiple sources and multiple feedbacks pouring in from different sources with you, you have to prioritize. Like, if you have 30 issues in front of you to be responded to, how do you prioritize that thing? Like which one to take up first and then respond to, and then, because you can't do all at once in your day-to-day managing other activities as well.
Yeah. So it's always a struggle with the prioritization with road mapping and stuff like that. I mean, it's never going to be perfect. Someone's always going to be mad, whether it be an external customer or an internal stakeholder. I mean, you're constantly having to make that balance and make those choices. So the way I always approach it, especially when setting up a if you're doing like an initial annual roadmap, or is I will approach it from the impact to effort standpoint. That's the number one thing that I start off first. I will grab the 4-quadrant chart for it, and Y axis is effort, I think. Axis is impact. I always forget to do. That's why I have it saved. And then I will grab a couple of specific individuals from my teams, usually like senior developers, QA, and usually someone from like our product marketing team and stuff like that. And we will look at them and go from a standpoint of, and just start mapping them out. That's always the first step we would approach it at that point. That's the way I've always liked to do it, because it gets a visual sense of everything, of what is being asked for and what is being, because it's like, yeah, we've got, the entire customer base is asking for, X thing or something like that, but it's going to take us 9 months to do. So that's obviously a high level, high profile item that we need to look at, but we kind of need to balance it with things that are going to be, quick wins that are, really high impacts, but low efforts. But even then, we also have to balance, internal items, things like, say there's some regulatory changes coming up. So we need to make some changes to our encryption, or we need to, Google Chrome is coming out with a brand new version, so we got to make sure that that is compatible with that, or Mac is coming out with a new operating system, or if it's an iOS app, same thing, need to pump out a new version to make sure compatibility and stuff like that, because they're coming out, version 14 or 15 at that point, like that. So it's a balancing act, and you do the best you can based on that. But once you kind of get that impact effort level, once it comes a little more clear at that point, after that, usually we'll get some high level estimates on, actual hours. Because right now that initial impact effort is literally just going in. That should be a lot of effort, but actually when you actually figure out what that is going to take, I'm able to basically just create a roadmap from that point. And after that, it's actually just getting together, and we'll get together with the internal stakeholders and figure out if it is beneficial, if I'm missing something in the thing, or if they decide like, no, even though this is going to take, an extra 2 months and you've dropped it, a couple of priority, we really should bump this up. But I initially didn't do that because it needed to be like it just, I decided that it was better to have some of the little more quick wins before we got to that. And we bogged down our entire, development team for 6 months or something like that. I wish there was a straightforward answer. It'd be great. It'd be absolutely amazing if there was a straightforward answer to do this, if we could just pump in like an equation and just do it. But no, it's never going to be a straightforward answer. And then like, that's just, from the standpoint of, at the beginning of the year, defining a roadmap, going down the line, if you're in the middle of your year and some massive thing pops up, things shift around and you have to make those concessions on like, is this a more important item than, the big thing, that big, UI rework that we're working on right now? It's like, okay, yes, it is. But other times it's like, okay, this is a big issue, but it's a big issue with the old UI, and it's not necessarily going to be an issue with the new UI. So even though this is going to be a pain for everyone using it for the next, 2 months or something like that, we may deprioritize it unless it like completely breaks the system. At that point, it's like you're stuck. You kind of have to break it, because even if it's going to be gone in 2 months, it's still, they got to use it for the next 2 months. But if there's a way to get a workaround for it, then you kind of go like, I'm sorry, it's like this will be fixed in the next update, blah 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 blah, and then you go from there. It's, man, I wish someone would figure out a way to make things easy, but it's not. It's always super nebulous, and you make a plan for the year and then it's going to change in 2 weeks. So it's always just being flexible and making those changes as best fit for not only the customers, but the actual company itself. Because if there is a sense of what needs to be important for the company, because it's like, the company needs to, make money to actually keep running. I mean, so you need to make some changes or add some stuff to, keep those finances coming in at that point. And you have to balance that with keeping the customers on hand. So it's just balancing act, and you're going to make mistakes and you're going to mess up and you're going to deprioritize. That's something that blows up in your face and 2 weeks after you deprioritize it, and then it becomes the number one priority, and you just got to roll with the punches at that point.
Yeah, that's perfectly understandable. So there is no straightforward, formula to this, but definitely you have to like be agile and lean in this process. So you can quickly try a few things and see what are working, what are not working, and then build on those which are working. You mentioned about you sometimes you have changed your plans all of a sudden due to the external changes. So last 3 years, whole world saw a sea of changes happening around us because of the pandemic, and everyone had to trash their older plans and rework all the strategies. So as far as the customer feedback collection and management is concerned, did you see any impact on this with respect to pandemic?
The pandemic was kind of weird for me, because I kind of shifted between companies twice during the pandemic. So pre-pandemic, the company I was working with, I was doing in-person interviews with some of our local customers. I was working through prototyping products and getting those in front of customers before you even get a developer even messing with them. We were prototyping them. We're getting into the people like directly at that point. And I moved to a new company about 2 months before the pandemic. And so I joined this company, and we had some really close relationships with some of these local companies, and that had to change, immediately, essentially, once I started. So they had a number of processes in place for collecting feedback, which really was just like email addresses and then going to talk to them, because they were wanting to be very hands-on. So when we did that, when that whole thing, I had to go in there and we had to actually implement some more digital customer feedback tools. And the one we landed on at that point was AHA is what we landed on.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And that's the one that we used for that. And then I moved to I moved to where I am now at Addteq, and it was a very, it's another interesting way. Like here we're using Jira Service Desk for the main kind of focus for customer feedback at that point, plus all the little other tools and things like that. And so customer feedback is what I've noticed, and things are, getting a little bit back to what it was beforehand. But at the height of it, everything went a lot more digital. So all these digital tools kind of popped up out of nowhere for customer feedback. And the ones that existed beforehand, suddenly had massive amounts of new customers on hand. And so they made these massive improvements and added new things that were necessary. I haven't done a prototyping thing with a customer in a while, and that's just because it's really hasn't been needed. We were the one at the previous company where I had done it. It was a very complex tool and a completely new tool that we were working on. So I needed that prototyping, and haven't needed that in a while to actually get in touch with customers. But it's something that, yeah, I mean, it became a lot more phone calls, a lot more Zoom calls, a lot more, customers just like, implementing things and pulling tickets directly from there, versus, going like, oh, you're 45 minutes away from me, let's meet for lunch or something like that.
Right.
So it was just a lot more digital tools and a lot less face-to-face.
Right. Great. So, let me come to the next question on this, Jason. Can you share with us some examples where sometimes, it happens like a particular customer feedback just clicks at the right time to you, which opens up too many, use cases, and you are just excited to, implement that significantly, which helps you to improve your product significantly. So how did that happen to you, and how did you manage it?
So probably the best and most recent example I can give you is we had a negative review on our product that called out saying our product was using some high resources, it was being slow, and so something like that. And it wasn't something that we had necessarily seen. We'd seen some, little blips here and there, but they were having a consistent problem with that. So because of that, review, we kind of started looking more into some improvements that we could make from decreasing the resources that were needed for it, increasing the performance for it, and things like that. And we realized that we were having some kind of like some junk issues that were popping up. And so since then, we made some fairly immense improvements in the performance and resource usage of our product since then. And every time we've done a new deployment that we've implemented that that check into the product. We had a little more of a minor check, but it's a lot more of a major step now to going forward with those checks for performance. And so it caused us to, not necessarily, it's not a sexy, improvement. It's not the one that, gets people going because it's a new feature or anything like that, but it's the one that has probably one of the more, impactful on a day-to-day basis for our users, that cause things to, everything to load more quickly, to allow us to have more data show up, for everything like that. And so that one review really caused us to look more into that and bump that up in priority, for just general performance improvements, which are always something that I love to do, but it's not always something that it's always something that's a little more difficult to get approved by stakeholders, because it's not a exciting improvement. It's always just a good improvement that needs to happen.
Yes. Yeah, that's really important. Like sometimes, it's even for me in my previous organization, it had happened with me as well. So sometimes you just chase those fancy, features which will create customer delight, but
it's more fun.
And you tend to ignore those basic ones, which helps you to grow your app in its capacity. So it's really important to balance this out and not just go for those fancy items which all your competitors are doing, and just for sake of doing that, you don't have to do that. So coming to my next question. So when we talk about customer feedback, so we talk about two things, like collection of customer feedback, right? And then management of that feedback. So how do you manage them, bring them together in a single source of truth, and then how do you derive, right insights from that. But there is a third aspect to this, like responding to those, feedbacks from the customers. So because it's not a one-way communication, you have to respond to them, no matter whether you are going to accept that feedback or not, work on that immediately in the short term or in the long term. It might not fit in within your, product roadmap or product strategy or vision as well. So sometimes customers confuse between their needs and their desires. So they are, suggesting you a very customized requirement, which might only suffice to one particular use case. But when you look at in the larger context, it might not be feasible for you to just develop for one singular, use case. So how do you manage this communication with the customers on their feedback? Any particular tips to share on this?
I mean, it's a careful balancing act at that point. I mean, emotions do kind of can get out of hand, especially when it comes to bugs and issues and things like that. It's a lot of balance. It's like I said, it's just being careful. I mean, it's understanding, and it's never. So the best tip I can give is just never disregard them entirely. Even if if you just message, if it's message back saying, or saying back, it's like, okay, well, we're not going to do that. Like, that's never going to go well. It's not going to be good for you. It's not going to be good for the company. It's not going to be good for the customer. If someone brings up a feature that, let's just say, is completely irrelevant to your product at that point, something that I've always done is like, I was like, all right, number one is like, okay, I understand what you're asking for, but second question is, why are you asking for this for our product? So it's like, I'll give an example, is we had this is a previous company, but it's one that's in my head right now, is we had a customer, one of our larger customers, submitted a request for a brand new feature for our product. And it was, we looked at it, we did some quick, high level estimates, and we figured out it was going to be like a 4 to 7 month project or something like that. I mean, it was like completely derail our entire, like basically the rest of the year at that point. So I think it was early in the year when we got it. And so we're like, why are they asking for this? Like, so I ended up getting on a call with them and ended up figuring out that the reason why they're asking for this is because they were using a report for something that it wasn't necessarily designed for. And basically that report was missing one field that they needed to make it work. And so I got on the call and goes, oh, that's all you need. You don't need this massive new report to develop that's going to take us forever and make it, because it's going to be super customizable. And granted, it was probably a good thing to have, but we're like, this is not the main focus of our thing. It's just, this is like, we had some reports that were helpful for the users. And so like, oh yeah, that's it. So if we just added this one field to this one report, you'd be perfectly happy. Like, oh yeah, we had that thing done in about an afternoon. We had it developed, tested, deployed in an afternoon, and it was done. And so managing that, and that's just an example that went happy at that point. I mean, but the fact of the matter is, if for whatever reason we ask them, it's like, okay, this is a feature, like, why are you asking for this? And they go like, oh, it's because of, say we didn't have any reports at all, because the reports were not a necessary aspect of it. It comes down to, it's like, okay, why are you asking for reports all of a sudden? I mean, what are you trying to use reports for? First step is understanding what they're asking for. And this goes for, bugs or issues that are brought up. This goes for feature requests, feature improvements, the whole thing is understanding the why, because what people are asking for and what people are actually wanting are often two separate things. They think they know what they want, and so they ask directly what they want. They've put in time and effort to basically put in I've had customers draw up entire mock-ups and process flows and send them to me and go like, this is what I want. And I go, why? It doesn't make any sense to what the whole product is. And so it goes like, okay, I understand that what you're asking for, but unfortunately, this isn't something that we are going to prioritize anytime soon. It's in our backlog. I mean, I can't promise you whenever it's going to be done, but it's because it's pretty low at this point, and it could get bumped up, it could get bumped down over the next while. And then we have it in our backlog. We've done our due diligence so far to the point of getting it to that point. We may reach out if we have any other questions, and we'll go from there. It's just being a decent person with these requests, and that's 90% of responding to them is just being a decent person, whether it's a negative or a positive response, is going like, I understand what you're asking for, and I see why you're asking for it, but at the same time, this is something that you're specifically asking for, and it's going to take, based on our estimates, it's going to take a large amount of our time and effort at this point. And it's something that we're going to look into going forward, but it's not going to be something that we're going to get to any time in the immediate future. And then if you've got the time or the bandwidth to do it, having regular touch bases with these customers, especially if they're this sounds bad, because the smaller customers are just as important as the larger customers. But I mean, the fact of the matter is the larger customers pay for most of the stuff. So I mean, they do unfortunately get a little more priority, and I hate that that's the fact, but it's the nature of business, unfortunately. And like I said, be a decent person, understand it, don't just ignore it. If they ask questions, a year later, like, hey, where's this going? You respond back saying, this is something that it's still in the backlog. If it's in a reasonable point where it's in the roadmap for the next year, you can let them know it's currently in the roadmap for the next year. That's, again, as of right now, things may change. I mean, I have been on the other side of things with other products, bringing feedback to product teams, and it comes down to, it's like, okay, I understand, but I would really like this. And you go, and the other team, if the other team goes like, that's like, I get you want it, but the fact of the matter is you're the only one asking for this. And then that's the end. Like, I'm going to be super annoyed with that. But they go like, I understand it's probably not going to get done, and we can try to get it in the roadmap, but I mean, I have other people other things that are higher priority. But at the end of the day, I'm going to do my best, but I can't promise anything right now with this. So again, just be a decent person. Be a decent person, understand them, don't disregard their feelings, because their feelings are 100% valid. I mean, you may not fully understand them, but the fact of the matter is they are. And it comes, and that's not just product management. That's, just day-to-day life. You may have pissed somebody off, but the fact of the matter is it's like, you don't understand what happened, but it affected them, and that's it. You don't just disregard it. So, yeah.
So one word comes to my mind when you responded to this is the empathy. So you have to be empathetic to your customers, not just your customers, but being a product manager, you have to deal with many stakeholders, internally, externally. So you have to be empathetic to everyone, so that you can make that balancing act on managing everyone's expectation, at the same time be on track with respect to your product vision and your strategies. So that's in an essence is the role of the product manager doing on day-to-day basis.
Oh yeah, you got to be the bad guy. I've told that to plenty of people before. I'm like, I will be the bad guy. I mean, it's the nature of the role. I mean, they say the product manager is the CEO of the product, and if anything goes wrong or right with the product, it's on the product manager, one way or another. That is just the way it is, and it's always a very public role. It's a very dangerous role, but it can be a very fulfilling role.
All right, Jason, that was a wonderful discussion, and I'm sure our listeners must have got loads of insights from this. I personally benefited from this. Thank you so much for such wonderful insights. While we are on this topic, customer feedback in product management, just wanted to highlight, we at Amoeboids, we have developed an application, Jira add-on called Roadmap Portal for Jira Service Management. So those teams who are using JSM for their customer ticketing systems. They can, just use this add-on to, it helps you to collect, to show your product roadmap to your customers. They can log in it with their JSM login, and they can actually vote on the items in your roadmap. They can comment on those, discuss with other use cases. Other customers can see their comments, and then you can respond to those comments there itself. And being connected to the Jira itself, you can see all those feedbacks within your Jira tickets. You can connect your development tickets to those items in the JSM, and you can bring in the automation, so you don't have to manually change their statuses. You can definitely, as the development goes in your development ticket, the respective items can move in the respective buckets on your roadmap as well. So customer feedback collection and customer feedback management is made simple with this application roadmap portal for JSM. So do have a look at it if you are a team using JSM. So with this, we are coming to the end of the session. Jason, once again, thank you so much for such a wonderful session. I'm sure Addteq also doing some wonderful things in Jira Marketplace. I just the other day I was exploring your app, excellent table in Confluence. Mm-hmm. So do you want to speak about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Addteq, we have a couple of different products under our belt. Our two main ones are called Excellentable and Unstoppable. Excellentable, just mentioned, I've talked about it a few times. It's a collaborative spreadsheet tool that allows you to directly input it into Confluence. At that point, it's a tool for Confluence. It allows you to create, edit, share, and it's a dynamic and interactive spreadsheet. So, I mean, think of it just like any other collaborative spreadsheet tool. You can have multiple people working on it at the same time. You can have just singular source of truth, and you don't have multiple different spreadsheets running around. One person's got yesterday's version of their spreadsheet file, and then another person has got seven days ago. It allows you just that Excel easeability, but directly within Confluence. And then allows you anyone to just jump in and work on it at the same time. We've got we got server, data center, and cloud-based versions of it. So whatever you need, we've got it working. The other one that we've got that I wanted to spotlight is called Unstoppable, and it's an app for Jira and Confluence that allows the visually impaired to actually provide accessibility for Jira and Confluence. So it uses JAWS and NVDA screen readers to take control of what Unstoppable is doing. And so it allows them to pinpoint directly in their task at hand in Jira and Confluence. And it allows your organization to achieve that 508, A11Y, and WCAG 2.1 compliance as well, which is just always a double bonus right there. So just a quick explanation of two of our big tools and products from Addteq. So take a look at it if it interests you, for sure.
Great. Thank you so much for that information. And with this, we are coming to the end of the session. To our listeners, thank you so much for joining us today, and do subscribe to our YouTube channel for next episode. And you can also follow Amoeboids and Addteq on LinkedIn for further updates. You can visit our website, amoeboids.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.